Hey yo, what's good? I just finished watching this documentary. It's called The Fight, and this documentary is done by PBS and the American Experience. As you can see right here, I think they were the sponsors of this movie, and this movie is about excuse me, Joe Louis versus Max Schmeling. Two is the rematch. How this fight was at that time the fight of the century because it had so much significance with the war going on, with the Nazis getting into power, with them getting more powerful, and Hitler, who's so charismatic, and a leader to Germany, who actually supported Max Schmeling, and Hitler invited Max Schmeling to dinner with his family, or with everybody else, because I don't think he had a family, right? He invited him to dinner with the Nazis after he beat Lewis the first time. So Max Schmeling was never a Nazi, and to that they said that, well, the Nazis didn't really want him anyway. So that's why they never even asked him if he wanted to be in the Nazis. And he probably would have said yes, because he seemed like a guy who was just going with the flow. Like, he didn't want any problems. He supported his country. He loved his country, but he did not support the Nazis, and he did not agree with what they did, but he didn't fight against them. You know what I mean? But so he probably would have joined the Nazis, in my opinion. But that's beside the point. This documentary starts off by telling the stories about these two men. How Max Schmeling came out from a small town in Germany, then went to Berlin to fight, where Berlin's probably like Harlem was to, like a big town, a fight town filled with pimps, like that party town, especially in those times, like the 20s and the 30s. It was like those 30s before the depression hit, right? So he went to that town. Then he went to the United States to fight. He won the world title from James Sharkey, by disqualification, and he got a lot of criticism for winning that way. It was like it was he won. He won. I think it was a low blow, and he just folded, and the referee stopped the fight, and then his corner came in. And he's like, "Hey, man!" So they gave the title to Schmeling via disqualification. So that didn't fly, right? So they gave him a rematch, and he won a very close decision, very controversial decision. He didn't have the title then. Then he went back to Germany. It was a disappointment, right? But he was like a handsome man at that time, and a guy that had the backings of Hitler and the Nazis back then. They supported him. They liked him. But even though he had the Jewish manager Joe Jacobs, in fact, he went to Germany. He fought a few times in Germany as well, and he knocked some guy out in Germany, and everybody in the stadium got up and did the Bellini salute, which is the famous Sieg Heil, right, for Hitler. And even his manager Joe Jacobs got up and did the Sieg Heil of the Nazis, and he got a lot of criticism from the U.S. for getting backed up by the Nazis, and the Nazis even stopped supporting him a little bit because his Jewish manager did that. They're like, "What the hell, dude? You're Jewish. We don't support you." You know, obviously, we all know what the Nazis did to the Jews. So then this guy's Sieg Heiling, like if he was part of the Nazis. So that's why they were kind of pissed off at Schmeling for that. I'm sorry, I'm spacing out a little bit, but yeah. Then we got Joe Louis's mini documentary as well. He was always a shy kid, son of a farmer. He was always quiet. In fact, he was so quiet that they put him in special ed. Like, he was slow. Like, friends at the time said that Joe Louis was slow. Like, they put him in special ed classes, but he was not slow in fighting. One of his running friends invited him to boxing because he was taking violin lessons so he wouldn't be getting in trouble. Like, his mom would give him money so he'd take violin lessons. So Joe Louis knew how to play the violin as well. One of his other remarkable talents, if Joe Louis needed any more to be, touted for. But instead, his friends like, hey, let's do this boxing thing. So he did try this boxing thing. Let's see if it works out, right? Turned out to work out for him very well. He was being trained by James, what's his name? Jack Blackburn. Yes, Jack Blackburn, who fought as a lightweight around the early 1900s, and he was managing a lot of fighters. And they're like, dude, watch this Joe Louis kid. And he's like, man, a black guy? A black heavyweight? No, ain't nobody want to see a black fighter fight. He would only promote white fighters because we know about the racism that black people had to endure at that time. It was harsh. It was harsh, but he just saw something in Joe Louis. Joe Louis was a great fighter, and he knew it. So here we got Jack Blackburn, a former contender back in the day, managing one of the greatest heavyweights of all what would be one of the greatest heavyweights of all time in Joe Louis. So he told Joe Louis not only how to fight, right, but how to act as a black man, how to act as a black fighter. He told him how Jack Johnson was a negative example for the Negro at that time, right? He was the definition of how a black fighter should not act. He should not brag about beating his opponent. He should not smile. He should not get with white women. In fact, like they said he could not be with a white woman in public. And don't get it wrong, Joe Louis liked his women, right? And he got of all colors. So he was just not allowed to do any of that in public. So he was pretty much promoted to be the opposite of Jack Johnson. That was his cross to carry at that time. And he was one of the most quiet sports figures of all time. In fact, one writer said that Joe Louis is the most quiet sports figure of all time. He said even quieter than, and then I forgot who he said, but that guy happened to be the mute pitcher for the New York Mets. So Joe Louis spoke less than a mute pitcher, right? But that's how they painted him. But that's how he always was too. He was always a little slow, but when he got into the ring, he was fast. He could bang. That's why they call him the Brown Bomber, because he could bang. No one hit like Joe Louis. And this set up their first fight, Max Schmeling versus Joe Louis, which everyone I may add, except for Jack Johnson, everyone expected Joe Louis to just murder Schmeling, to just run through him, because Joe Louis was being touted as this great fighter, the next great fighter, the next great heavyweight. But early on in the fight, Schmeling hurts Joe Louis with the right hand, and then he drops him. And that's the figure that all the newspapers, when he was on the ground, they said he became a scared, beaten boy. He went from this indestructible force to this scared, beaten boy. That's what Max Schmeling made him, a beaten boy, because he hurt him early on in the fight, and he kept beating him with that murderous right hand. Murderous, I'm telling you. He kept hurting Joe Louis. And then in the 13th round, he just drops him, and Joe Louis could not get up. And he went back to Germany. They celebrate. Before this fight for the Schmeling, the Nazis were against this fight. They didn't want him to fight this black person, because as they believed that black people were inferior at that time. They believed that. So they did not want even to come in contact with that. So they didn't have the support. In fact, they buried this fight. Like they didn't even cover it that much before the fight. They weren't even covering that this fight was gonna happen. But after the fight, everybody welcomed him. He got a hero's introduction. He got hero's welcome. That's the word that I wanted. Everyone supported him. Hitler came. That's when I'm saying that he got that dinner with Hitler. He got all the support from the Nazis. Everything. The government loved him. The government loved Max Schmeling. And at home, Joe Louis went into hiding for a while. He didn't show up. He wouldn't go into public for a long time because he was disappointed. The media had portrayed him as just a hype, as just the black hype, as a beaten boy. They would put pictures of, a big white guy beating, like, how they put like a black face, a guy with big old lips. Total racist pictorials, right? But they would do it. They did at that time. They just put he was a beaten boy, like no match. He's just a hype job, and that's why he would not come out because of how everybody felt. And when he did, he felt he was a disappointment to the black race for a while. But when he did it, he'd hear kids go, Max Schmeling, Max Schmeling, Max Schmeling. So he came back, from that fight with a vengeance. He wanted to get his revenge. And he beat 7 other fools, murdering these fools, right? That shouldn't even probably be in the ring with Joe Louis. He was murdering guys to prove that he wanted that rematch with Max Schmeling. And it came to the point where Max Schmeling was the first in line to fight for the heavyweight title. He was going to fight James Braddock, who is the Cinderella Man, who has that movie Cinderella Man. And they were about to fight, and then there were talks that no, he can't fight Schmeling because he'll take the title back to Germany with the Nazis. He can't, because then the heavyweight title will go back to Germany, and then it'll be in support with the Nazis. We don't want that. So they convinced James Braddock, not just by saying that, but by giving Braddock a percentage of Jack Johnson's earnings. I think it was his earnings or his what's it called, I think it was his earnings. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he got a percentage of his profits of the rest of his career. So it was monetarily a good move for Braddock to fight Joe Louis and not Schmeling, because he was making more money from that. So this fight came up, and instantly it was like Nazis, the Nazi support Schmeling. Even Roosevelt came, and then he pointed at Joe Louis's muscles. He's like, these are the muscles that are gonna take down Germany. And you see these rallies of guys carrying pictures of Hitler. So even though Joe Louis was black and, hated amongst white America, they hated the Nazis more. So white America was just as much behind Joe Louis as black America. Maybe not just as much, because Joe Louis meant so much for black people at that time, And then you got the Nazi support of Max Schmeling with the white race, with the Aryan race of superiority. You had that, and then the World War II tension, of course. So this was more than a fight between two men who also had animosity, because you got Joe Louis here. He wanted to prove that he was not a hype job by beating Max Schmeling. Did I already say that? I might have missed this. Did I already say that Joe Louis beat James Braddock for the heavyweight title? Yeah, well, Joe Louis beat James Braddock for the heavyweight title. If I said that, I'm sorry. He beat him for the heavyweight title, and then you had Schmeling over here that you got Schmeling saying that he should have been fighting for that heavyweight title. And so, saying that enough, going over there with the commission and all this, saying that he should have been the one. So he got the title fight with Joe Louis, and this is where we got the fight. This is where we got all this promotion. So it was a match between two guys who Max Schmeling wanted the heavyweight title, and he thought he could win because he already beat Joe Louis. Then you got Joe Louis here, who just wanted his revenge. He just fought for his revenge. That's why you got here. They fought for their people and their nations on the brink of war. Most of all, they fought for themselves because they both wanted to win. They both knew that this victory was very important for their careers. But it became much bigger than that, like I said before. It became Nazi Germany versus democracy. Joe Louis became the symbol of democracy. And this happened in New York Yankee Stadium. And you got in Yankee Stadium, it got packed with how much people? It got packed with 70,000 people. Packed Yankee Stadium. People, of all colors in the United States, just wanting. It was June 12, 1938, the second encounter. People from all over just wanted to see democracy prevail over Nazis. And you got that. Joe Louis murked. He murked Schmeling. You even had him hitting Schmeling with a hard shot to the body, to the kidney. And you could see it in the picture that Schmeling screamed. You say he screamed like a woman. He was knocked down like 4 times, and it was a first round. He murked him. He got him over. It was democracy prevails. It was America prevails over Germany. You know how we love to do our propaganda, to do nationalism. And this is what we got. Joe Louis was a representation of America that just defeated Hitler and the Nazis. That's what we got that day. That's why it was the fight, because it meant much more than boxing. I don't need to just read this. They fought for their countries, but they each wanted this fight individually just as much as everybody. Joe Louis became the hero because not only did Black America want him to win, but white America wanted him to win. And he became a hero mostly for black people, for the black kids, because they felt that Joe Louis could do this grand thing. He was the first heavyweight champion, black heavyweight champion since Jack Johnson. And this was a first heavyweight championship fight, or his first fight with Broderick was the first heavyweight championship fight between a black heavyweight and a white heavyweight in like 30 years, or the second shot, you know what I mean. But 20 years, I would say. Just following this story, it just shows how significant this fight was. A fight that it just can't exist anymore, because I'm not saying nationalism doesn't go to this extent, but I don't think a fight could mean something like this anymore. You got Mayweather versus Pacquiao, but that didn't mean nation. It wasn't America versus Philippines. It was just Mayweather versus Pacquiao. So if that fight, it was a big fight, but it was by no means the fight or the fight of the century like this was. And you don't even got the story between the two fighters, which made this fight even more important for them. So all in all, this documentary was very informative, very cool. It had a lot of fight footage, of course, from both of these men's careers. Max Schmeling's fights in Germany. His picture. He had a lot of pictures with Hitler. The pictures of when he fought in that German stadium when everybody did the Sieg Heil, and you got Joe. What's his name? I had it. I keep forgetting, man. These videos are long. I'm sorry. Joe Jacobs. That's his name. So you have this documentary really shows the importance of this event, of this fight, and about the racial tensions at that time. With you got Hitler, and then you got with Joe Louis, who represented what he represented. Just all the tension between the nations and their careers and their early life. How Joe Louis was a little bit slow. How we went to special ed. I do recommend this documentary. It's very, it's not like a movie, so it's more of a documentary type, and you expect that from PBS. It's a very PBS production, but it's very informative, and you will learn about the time, about their careers, and about this fight. What I wish they had more was more of their careers after, more of Joe Louis's life after, more of Schmeling's life. It gave like a minute for both of the fighters' careers after the fight. So it was like, yeah, Joe Louis joined the armed forces, and then he fought after past his prime. Rocky Marciano was his last fight, and then it said, yeah, Schmeling went to Germany, and he got no hero's welcome after this fight. That he got no support after that. But it's like, yeah, he fought, or he was past his prime, and he went to Germany, started a business and all. I wish they went a little bit more in depth after this fight into their lives and their careers. But other than that, I have no complaints about this documentary. I do recommend it, and I did see a few of these videos in YouTube. So if you would like to check this out after watching this video, I would recommend it to do it. So yeah, all in all, I would probably give this documentary probably 4 stars for what I mentioned of the last part. It was 90 minutes, a very quick 90 minutes too. So it's a good watch. You got 90 minutes on your times. Thanks for watching, everybody. And if you want to recommend some good boxing documentaries or movies that you'd like me to watch and review, go ahead and tell me. Go ahead and put it in the comment section. Or what do you think about this documentary if you already watched it? Don't forget to rate this video and subscribe. Peace.